Time for the 49ers Rush Podcast. And here's your host, John Chapman.
What is going on, faithful? I am excited today. Ant and I were talking. We're not at the same location, Ant, like we were for the draft weekend and all that stuff. We're now separated. You're over at Sacktown. I'm over in East Bay. How you doing today, brother?
Doing great. Excited about talking 49ers. And it's interesting because we're still in a time period where there's so much to talk about. But we're getting close to that point where it's going to be like, oh, no, nothing happens until training camp. So it's fun now, and I'm kind of enjoying everything as we go into the early part of this summer. But, yeah, it's been a while since we saw each other. It feels like we were just there at the draft party because it was so much fun. But we have been away for a couple of weeks now, and it's interesting to see how the developments with the players. And I got to give you credit. The interviews that you were doing with the rookies is phenomenal. I enjoyed them very much. I was listening to them last night. Great job with that. And I got to kind of listen in and you kind of get more of a connection with these guys. So bravo to you. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, man. The whole idea is like, I want to make these players come to life. Like, because we know the draft pick, we watch the tape, but like, man, there's somebody behind or underneath that helmet. And hopefully that is beneficial. We've got a lot of positives out of it. People have been very kind for, what they're saying about. But if you missed some of the interviews, go check them out. We got 4 rookie interviews done already. We're trying to charge up some more. Now, I do have to say, a little scheduling note, I'm going to be on vacation, finally, me and the family next week. So I'm taking a week off. I'm still going to go live from vacation. Schedule comes out. I got to record. I can't help it. All the 49ers Rush road trips, which, man, I'm just just texted right now, the caterer in New Orleans, which I was telling Ant that menu that we're trying to build out for our tailgate. Like, that's where we've been doing this so long. We're building out a tailgate menu for, I don't know, 5-6 months from now in New Orleans. I'm so pumped, man. We got to get seafood on there. We got it on there. But anyway, so at the draft process, it's kind of come to a close. The undrafted free agents seems like that's kind of wrapped up. So you have a 91-man roster intact with your International Player Pathway program. What are some of your overall kind of, okay, let's excel. We've gone through free agency. We've gone through the draft. What's kind of your overall assessment of the 2025 49ers roster as it is constructed currently?
I think they did a really good job of filling some holes. We kind of talked about it as it was happening in the draft, that they were very, very clear on what their targets were going to be. We're going to stop the run. We're going to go with defense. We're going to make sure that Robert Saleh has the necessary tools. And it made a lot of sense. Jed York is paying Robert Saleh a lot of money, and you got to turn this defense around. But I thought that they did fill those holes along the defensive line, getting not just 2, but 3 run stoppers along the defensive line. And then you just see Robert Saleh doing his thing by getting Nick Martin and getting that speed element. You're going to get big guys that can stop up front, and then that allows those fast linebackers to be able to run on the back end. So I thought they did a really good job of filling holes and adding pieces that were going to be able to contribute early. I think that's one of the key processes as well. But when you overlook what they did in the entire process, including the undrafted free agents, they were very strategic with the way that they went about this. And I thought that they did a pretty good job. Do I think that this is the best 91-man roster that the 49ers have ever had? No, I don't think that. But I do believe that they got a lot of potential for growth. And if these guys hit the way that they think they will, and I think the way we're all hoping, then it could be a really good 91-man roster that can compete in the NFC West and ultimately NFC. And I think that's what you're hoping for coming out of the draft process.
Yeah, it's funny because in the past we've been like, oh, the 49ers have the best roster in football. Like, you could make a blanket statement of that, and probably 3 out of the last 5 years, like, the 49ers are at least up there. I don't think anybody's saying that anymore. I don't think that is a general consensus. You've lost a lot, didn't replace a lot, except through the draft, but the draft is a little bit of a crapshoot. So you have to kind of see how that develops. So there's a little bit more of a projection when analyzing the 49ers roster and what that's going to look like. And the depth, I'm going to be honest with you, I think that's probably the biggest difference between past kind of 5 years. I don't like lumping them all together because they're all so different. The depth is questionable. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just you are betting on a lot of guys that are either late round picks, relatively extremely cheap free agents with no guarantees at all. That's kind of where you're at. So now the good news, that's kind of the bad side of the coin. Now, if we flip it over Harvey Dent style, the other side is you have the worst, easiest, however you want to put it, schedule in the NFL. Every single metric that comes out, whether it's Warren Sharp, strength of schedule, playoff teams, whatever, you got the easiest schedule in the NFL. I don't think anybody would really argue with that. Does that balance out? It's so, I in my fantasy football league where, we're all over the country and nobody else is really a Niners fan there. One more is like, we're arguing, are the 49ers a playoff team? And I'm like, hell yeah, they are. And everybody else is like, no, they're not. And so I don't know. Am I crazy to think that, yes, there are some major roster issues. The coaching staff has been elevated exponentially, and then you add that to finally a favorable schedule. This to me feels like a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, FanDuel just put it at, I think it was like 10, 10.5 over under wins. And that's the second most in the NFC behind the Eagles. I think that the 49ers are a playoff team for that reason. Last year, it wasn't like the offense didn't move the football. They moved the football a lot. Brock Purdy and the offense got up and down. Their problem was they couldn't punch it in the red zone. They couldn't convert when they got down there. And I think that's something that they could get better at with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. And boy, did I love seeing Christian McCaffrey out at OTAs running around and catching the football from Brock Purdy. I thought that was a needed sight. And I think that that's one of the keys to making the playoffs this year is just that offense continuing to move the football, but punching it into the red zone. And then the thing that really got the 49ers last year was run defense. They couldn't stop a nosebleed at times during football games. And now they're going to be able to do that because you got big hosses up front. If there's anything you can say about this defense in 2025 is they are going to be able to stop the run with Alfred Collins, CJ West, and Mikael Williams. What does that mean for the pass rush? At this point, as long as you can get it to 3rd and 8, I think you have a fighting chance. And I think that's what their goal is. Let's force 3rd and longs instead of those 3rd and shorts, which that defense last year could not stop 3rd and short, and they couldn't stop 4th and short. 4th down was terrible last year. Lots of teams converting. So I think that they're a couple plays away in these games. You talked about the favorable schedule. That's going to be one of the keys. And I do think they're going to have some opportunities. And the 49ers' ultimate goal, just like always, has got to be get the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Because if they could potentially do that, and I know that's a stretch. A lot of people are saying, hey, 10, 11 wins. But if you could potentially get that, you might never have to leave Santa Clara. And that's crazy to think about.
Oh, that is exciting. Now, I do have to do a little bit of mea culpa on the ending of the John and Wayne show that we did on Tuesday. We had a comment from Black 59 Razor, who is awesome. He was talking about the Debo traded pick resulted in Jordan James. I was wrong. Wayne wasn't, but I thought it was pick 160. I was wrong. It's pick 147. So Black 59 Razor, you were correct. The Debo trade resulted in the net pick 147 for Jordan James. I thought it was 160. I was off on that. That's my bad. Now, the 160 pick, shout out to my man Peanut Jeff. He says, man, watching that Marquise Siegel tape was so refreshing and inspiring. After pulling my hair out, seeing Jordan Watkins jog around. So he's talking about our breakdowns that we do over on our Patreon of the 49ers Rush. We're going through and we have draft breakdowns on everybody except for the 7th round picks. I'm going to start those after today's show. I have some questions that I want to talk to you about these two players. Okay. Jordan Watkins first. I did not have him graded because I watched his tape and I was like, this is not a draftable player. There were just so many bad things that I saw on tape. Literally takes 7 out of 10 plays off. That's part of the scheme that they do at Ole Miss. So, like, how much of that is him? Does not like to block. The interview that he had, he did talk about it. Talk me off the ledge here, because I understand Jordan Watkins had a great combine, and that's all the 49ers talk about when they talk about him. What am I missing? Because I get the athleticism, but I don't know, man. He doesn't play at 4.3 speed at all. He can't stack receivers, but almost all of his production came in one game against Arkansas. Doesn't block. He's got some Jake Brendel-esque to him where he will watch his teammates fight right in front of him and just stay out. Like, he does not want to get involved. Am I crazy in seeing this? I hate doing negativity on shows, but I'm struggling with this draft pick.
Yeah, I did a breakdown of him just recently as well. And I noticed some of the things you noticed, the fact that he doesn't always give effort on routes, and plays that aren't coming towards him. And, you brought up the fact that Ole Miss, that's some of what they do. But I think that's concerning. And I think 49er fans look at that a lot because of some of the things we've seen in the past from other wide receivers. When it comes to vertical routes, this dude, he can get it done. He's got a pretty good stop and start. He can stretch the field vertically. I think that's one of the elements of his game that I like. There's no 50-50 balls for him. He's not going to go up and get it. He's not going to win that way. He does have the ability to have hole shots, but you don't see the plays as far as yak yardage for a guy that's 4.3. I think you're right when you say he doesn't look like he plays at 4.3 speed. I don't think so either. He looks more of a possession type receiver. And when I was watching him, he gave me Quentin Patton vibes, but I thought Patton had way better yak yardage. So to me, this was an interesting pick. I'm curious to see how they use him. And I think that if he could, press vertically down the field, he's going to have opportunities. I think he has a little bit of a hard time creating separation, which is kind of interesting for a guy that's 4.3, the threatening to go vertical. He just doesn't get in and out at the top of his stem very well to create that separation. So yeah, so far I've been trying to find the exact role that I expect them to use him in, and I haven't really seen it. Maybe they believe they can pull something out of him. They saw something that we didn't. Maybe they got to talk to him or see him run certain routes that they really like. But this is a little bit different because most of the 49er speedsters like Jake Cowing or even Danny Gray had moments where you saw him catch the ball over the middle and then take it to the house. You're like, that's why they got him. And I think that's one of the interesting things about Jordan Watkins. I just haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, and I would say the opposite of that is Marquise Siegel. Dude, you watch his tape, and it just screams 49ers. I had to tweet out like 6 weeks before the draft that I think the 49ers day 3 will highlight Marquise Siegel at some point because, 5'11", 199, versatility, tough. He has to be involved in every tackle. He has to. Like, it is in his DNA that if I'm close, I am getting involved at all times. Like, he just has to be around the ball. I love that about him, but I don't know where to put him. He's tagged as a safety, but most of his tape he's playing nickel. He's 4.3 speed guy again. Do you think where do you see the 49ers placing Marquise Siegel early? Because I feel like nickel's kind of his best tape.
I think they're going to play him at safety, and I'll tell you why. I think he's very similar to the skill set that Jimmy Ward had when he came out of college. You talk about the same size. They're literally 5'11", 199 pounds. It's almost identical. Jimmy Ward actually 191. And Siegel's got more speed. But the way that Robert Saleh used Jimmy Ward was his flexibility to be able to go into the slot or then play the deep third or come into the box. He kind of moved them all around. And I think that's the idea of getting a guy that has corner skills that can play safety. And so I think that they were very targeted on the type of player they were looking at. The other guy they met with in the process was Andrew Makuba. And you know this better than anyone. That's the same kind of player that he is. Former nickel corner at Clemson, comes and plays safety. I think that's what they wanted from that free safety position. They want versatility when it comes to nickel and dime packages. And I think they got it with Siegel. So I think this was a very strategic move by the 49ers, but a skill set that we like to see from a guy that really plays a lot more physical than a 5'11", 199-pound guy. He's actually a lot stronger coming out of college than Jimmy Ward was. Jimmy Ward was not strong. They tried to move him to corner because of those skills. I just think he's a similar player. That's how the Bears plan to use him.
Look at that. Slick says that's what I saw when I watched Siegel. Jimmy Ward 2.0. I didn't see it, but you opened my eyes, and voila, there it is. And, last year with all the cover one and cover one under, and seeing guys like Jair Brown manned up with tight ends, and it's just like, oh, don't do that. That is not. So, I get it. And that's not a knock on Jair Brown. That's not his skill set. But Marquise Siegel, that is his skill set, right? So then the question comes to this, and this is the title of the show. Who are the 49ers long shot starters? Shout out to Ant for coming up with this. let's talk about the safety position. Jair Brown starting week 1. Like, that's just, it seems to be a matter of fact. Had a terrible year last year, but so did everybody on the defense under the worst defensive coordinator in 49ers history. Jason Pinnock gets $2.2 million fully guaranteed 1-year deal. Marquise Siegel. You bring in lots of other guys, but like, who do you have starting week 1 with the Malik Mustafa injury? Who do you think is going to be that number 2 safety out there? George Odom? Who's your long shot starter for that number 2 safety spot week 1?
I think it's Pinnock. And the reason being, you go back and look at his film, and he was a former nickel as well. This is a guy that shows versatility to walk up into the box. He's also a very good blitzer coming out, as well from that kind of dime nickel type role. But he's got some of those versatile skills to be able to cover. And I think that's what they were really looking for, is versatility for Robert Saleh. Jair Brown is a guy that, even though he misses a lot of tackles, he operates the best kind of around the box. I think that's his best situation for him. I worry about him when he's covering a deep third, which I wonder about Pinnock as well. But I think that they believe, and this is a Robert Saleh former draft pick, so they have a really good idea of what his skill set is. I think that they plan on playing him next to Jair Brown early. And then I think at some point they would love to work Siegel in, but I think that they are even looking at this as potential that Siegel's not ready to go this year. Malik wasn't supposed to play last year. Malik was supposed to marinate and get ready to go. But we had the Hufanga injury. You had the inconsistent play from George Odom. And so you just had to go ahead and go that direction. So I think that that's what their plan is. And I like the skill set of Pinnock, and I think he's going to add some things to this team. And if you look at a few things the 49ers did in this draft, Nick Martin is a tremendous blitzer. Upton Stout is a tremendous blitzer, and Pinnock is a great blitzer as well. That's not a draft pick, but just something to remember. Saleh doesn't blitz a lot, but when he does, he usually blows you up with some sort of overloaded blitz, and I think that's what the 49ers are going to do a little bit this season.
Yeah, and I will say this about safety. It's the one spot that you got the bodies. Like, even if Pinnock doesn't work out or Siegel doesn't work out, that safety room, I mean, it is peppered with a lot of playing time. George Odom, Jason Pinnock, Upton Stout, Richie Grant, Jair Brown, Malik Mustafa when he comes back, Marquise Siegel, Jalen Mahoney was one of my favorites. Your favorites too. I remember, like, at training camp, Jalen Mahoney was showing out. Now he's undersized, whatever else, but like, he's a quality player. Even whenever they called him up with all the injuries last year, he was awesome till he broke his arm. Quindell Johnson, like, this is the one position where you have depth, you have experience, and you have bodies. It's just, how is it going to shake out? There's no way you're keeping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 safeties. But there are options there. Now, the question then shifts to, all right, let's go to corners. I don't think that there are as many options at corner. And I think probably one of the weakest depth spots on this roster is, man, you got 2 clear-cut starters. A lot of teams don't have that. So Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green. Okay, cool. Boom, boom. Now, that number 3, is it going to be a nickel guy? Kyle Shanahan says, we want guys to play one spot. Like, he says, we want guys to play one spot, which means they're okay with Demo going in and out, but they would prefer to just keep him outside. Well, then, if that's the case, then your nickel corners, like, who's that going to be? Is Upton Stout already in it? You bring in, you've got Trey Avery, Chase Lucas, Trey Tomlinson, or do you go with an outside guy, Darrell Luter Jr., Siren Neal, who a lot of people kind of flew under the radar. Everybody talked Trey Brown because that got announced first. Siren Neal you get paid twice as much with $1.1 million guaranteed. Like, Siren, like, you look at Trey Brown, like, it's a quarter of the guarantees and contract. So Siren Neal is a player that I don't think they're talking about. Trey Tomlinson is a player that I don't think people are talking about. What are your thoughts on this corner position and some long shot starter competition, guys?
Yeah, I do think that there's going to be a lot of competition. I think their first option right now would be Upton Stout prepared to play nickel corner, but we don't know if that's going to work. We have seen the 49ers be able to pull this off where they get a guy who they draft who could start, but it didn't work out long-term. You look at Sam Womack, they drafted him to play nickel corner. He played it for 2 games, and then he had to be subbed out. Diamador Lenore took over, which I believe it was Diamador Lenore's original draft role. So they try to hit on these guys. And I think Upton Stout would be the first choice. He's going to get thrown out there into the mix the same way Renardo Green did, and they're going to see if he could develop. But I think what they did also was take some guys, and you brought up Trey Brown and Trey Tomlinson and Kieran Neal, some guys who have some experience, some ability, and just see what happens when they get into the system. I'm interested to see what happens with a guy like Trey Tomlinson, because this is a former teammate of D. Winters at TCU. This is a guy that John Lynch has watched a lot of. And when he became available on waivers, the 49ers went out and got him. And so I think that he's an interesting prospect, because I think that there's a lot more there. I mean, this is a former second-round pick. He didn't work out for the Rams. That didn't work. He barely played at all, in the last 2 years. So this is definitely a projection, but I do think he's in the mix to compete. So he's somebody that I'm still keeping an eye on, that I'm really curious to see what he could do in training camp, because I liked his TCU film a lot. I think that he's got a lot of the characteristics the 49ers love. He'll come up and stick you. He comes up and he fights for the football. So he's somebody that I haven't written off yet, and I think he could actually beat out a guy like Trey Brown. But there's an indirect competition between Upton Stout and Trey Brown and Trey Tomlinson to see who gets it. If Upton Stout's the best nickel corner or close to Deommodore Lenoir, he's going to win this role.
Oh, I like to hear that. And I'm so curious what they want. Like, it seems like they always go experience week one and then allow, like, okay, give the experienced guy that, like last year in training camp, George Odom took 100% of the snaps for team one safety all through training camp, all through preseason, and then you get out there week one, week two, doesn't work out. You had that Vikings game. I don't know if you remember that one. And then after that, they're like, all right, this ain't going to work. But he got every single first team snap. Now, you had the same safeties coach at Bullocks, but you got Ray Brown, new defensive back coach. You got Robert Saleh. There's some changes there. So I'm just curious if they continue the, hey, let's put some vets out there first and let the rookies solve it. Or do you just say, hey, we drafted this dude in the third round, Upton Stout. Third round. Get this dude out there. He's playing. We're launching him up the depth chart. I want to see how that's going to pan out. So if you had to bet right now and on who is the starting number 3 corner, inside, outside, however you want to do that, where are you putting your money at?
Man, this one's tough. I have been undecided, because I do like Upton Stout a lot. And I think that he's physically, as far as in the run game, he's physical enough to play the run game. And I think that's normally the biggest question mark. And I think he's got good enough coverage skills in the slot. But I think that you brought up, the veteran way is kind of the way to go, usually at the beginning of the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go with one of those veterans. But boy, am I rooting for Upton Stout. I want that to happen, because I think that's the best situation for the 49ers. If that dude shows out, he can play like Velcro at times. He can get locked onto guys. Go back and watch some of his film, what he did against Ohio State. He covered some really good receivers. So I would say probably veteran, but man, I'm rooting for Upton Stout.
Oh, I like it. All right, let's stay. Almost all these conversations about starters are all on defense. I think there's one, maybe 2 spots open on the offensive side. So let's stick with defense. Linebacker. Nick Martin, dude, talked to him yesterday, and I was like, what's your goal to trade? He's like, I'm starting. I'm starting. He's like, I'm starting. That's like, he wouldn't even have it. It wouldn't even be discussed. That dude is starting. And remember, with Robert Saleh, you had Fred Warner started week 1. Dre Greenlaw took a while, but he was a 5th round pick. I mean, he'll start rookies. Even the same thing with Jadeveon Sherwood in New York. Like, they had CJ Mosley. They had like that dude started his rookie year. He was a late round pick. I do believe that Nick Martin is starting, but that linebacker 3 role, I think, is a little bit up. D. Winters is, I think, who I would like to see win it, but you cannot count out Luke Gafford, $1.8 million deal with over $600,000 fully guaranteed. They paid him. It's one of the largest contracts they did in free agency. I think that is a legitimate chance to be your number 3 linebacker that Robert Saleh brought in to compete. What are your thoughts on the number 3 linebacker role?
I think it's up in the air. I think that there are 3 linebackers in the mix for it. You brought up Luke Gifford, and I do think that there's a lot of special teams involved in Luke Gifford as well, with Brant Boyer, his assistant special teams coordinator working with Gifford in Tennessee. I think that there's a direct correlation there. They did spend a little bit of money to make sure they're better at special teams, because kickoff was not good last year. You need some guys that can make tackles. Jalen Graham and those guys weren't getting it done. So Gifford makes a lot of sense there. But he had good film also playing linebacker. I think this guy's in the mix. And one of the things you had to get better at when you're in base sets, when you're in that 4-3 with 3 linebackers out there, is stopping the run. Last year was a problem. D. Winters did not grade out to be a very good run stopper last year. Devondre Campbell at moments was good with it. But when it came to, the big moments, he just shied away. So I think that they got 3 guys. D. Winters, who's athletic, through the roof, coverage skills are there. You can't pick on him when you're in a base set. So that's something good, especially with the Rams getting 2 pretty good tight ends. Now they can go to more 12 personnel. So I think that's going to be interesting to see them put the 49ers in some base sets this year, the way they did last year. But also you've got Tatum Bethune, who's a very good run stopper. And so I think that he's in the mix as well. So I think those 3 guys are really battling it out if we presume that Nick Martin is going to start. And I think that Nick Martin is going to start at one of those linebacker positions because he's just too good. He's too talented. And I think the 49ers want to get him out there. But those 3 guys, I think D. Winters as an incumbent is going to have the first step. And then I think Gifford and Bethune are going to be competing to see who can get there. And whoever can stop the run the best is probably going to have the biggest advantage and best chance to start.
Ooh, that gets me excited. Now, we draft all these defensive linemen. My question is, and they're all run stuffers, but the NASCAR package is a legitimate thing. Robert Saleh continued to do it with the Jets. He brought it in here. Who is your pass rush specialist starting for? We know Nick Bosa. Then I want you to fill out kind of that depth chart. Just the starting 4, it's 3rd and 15 in the first quarter, right? You send in your 4 bloodhounds, NASCAR game, all gas, no brakes, whatever you want to say. Who are those 4?
I'm going Mikael Williams. You have to have him out there, especially with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan talking about the fact he can move inside. And I think that that's a really good way for him to be able to get to the quarterback early, where he could use his lateral quickness to be able to make it more difficult for guards. So I think you got Bosa, you got Mikael Williams, whether he's playing outside or inside. And then I'm going Yetur Gross-Matos because he has the same ability. So good against guards, especially in Carolina a couple years ago, where he was generating all of his sacks from the inside. That was the original role for him. Floyd was supposed to be on the outside with Gross-Matos on the inside and obvious pass downs. And then I'm going with Sam Okuwanu. I think that Sam Okuwanu shows the same versatility, but I think you can rush it from outside. He showed enough skills. I think that those would be the guys. The interesting part is Drake Jackson going to be healthy? Because Drake Jackson played that role a couple years ago when we saw him against Pittsburgh. Yes, they weren't great sacks. They were track and run down sacks, but he still got him. And that's something you have to have. So I don't know what to do with Drake Jackson. I don't know what the expectations are for this player. I'm a fan of Drake Jackson. I think he's got a good skill set. We've just never seen it really on display. And the injury was so scary. So right now I'm leaning towards those other 4 guys, but I'm very curious what happens with Drake Jackson in training camp and if he's really healthy, what he could provide.
Man, Drake Jackson would be a perfect fit. I've almost written it off as, look, we can't plan on anything. I love what Invader says. Drake Jackson would be found money. That's the way to look at it. Look, dude, if you can come back and you can compete and you can keep strength, you can keep weight, and you can, dude just fizzles. He had that one good game where he had 3 sacks week 1. That's more sacks than he had the rest of the time. He had some tip passes his rookie year, but just can't stay healthy, can't stay strong. That injury is scary. It's just I would like it. I really would. I was pretty high on Drake Jackson. But I don't know. I don't think you can rely on it, but you could use it. Now, my favorite thing that you said about Sam Okuwanu is, look, that dude is a bull rush extraordinaire that always keeps his outside leverage and does not allow quarterbacks to escape out of the pocket. Yetur Gross-Matos is way better pass rusher. But, man, you go back to that Seattle Seahawks game where we lost that at home. I'm sorry. Yetur Gross-Matos, the 2 biggest plays of the game, let Geno Smith just freaking make that dude look terrible. Those 2 plays, him and Leonard Floyd, but mostly Yetur Gross-Matos. So I like Yetur Gross-Matos. I thought they would cut him and keep Leonard Floyd personally, but they didn't. So now we move on. Can he stay healthy? Can he have some integrity in the pass rush? Because, man, he just lets quarterbacks go wherever the hell they want. And so, can that develop? But man, that NASCAR package, like no defensive lineman, like usually they do 3-1, right? The Alfred Collins, maybe CJ West, maybe Jordan Elliott, maybe. I just don't know what that's going to look like. It's going to be interesting to see, to say the least. Now, let's flip to the offensive side, Ant. Talk to me about left guard. And man, you've been hitting this string pretty consistently. We got a long shot starter there.
Yeah, I think, people have been talking a lot about Connor Kobe. And when you're talking about direct, line of playing this system, he's not going to have to translate too much. And I think that's one of the keys. If you're going to get one of these young guys that can step in and start, people forget, though, last year, Dominic Pooney was not supposed to start at right guard. Dominic Pooney was third on the depth chart going into training camp behind Spencer Burford and John Feliciano. Feliciano had the knee issue. They wrote him off. Spencer Burford broke his hand. Then he's out. And then Dominic Pooney's playing. So the question for Connor Kobe is he going to get an opportunity to go out there and prove what he can do? And he is changing sides. That could be a difficult thing. I could see Chris Verster putting him behind Dominic Pooney. So that's going to be one of the things we're going to find out when we get out of training camp. Where is Connor Kobe lining up? If he lines up at right guard, they're looking at this as an eventual thing down the road. If he's lining up at left guard and getting reps behind Ben Barch and Nick Zakelj, there's an opportunity for him to come in and potentially win that job. Because I think when you look at Ben Barch, he's the most consistent between going ahead and blocking the run game and pass blocking. When you look at Nick Zakelj, he's the best pass blocker of the three guys. Then you look at Connor Kobe, he's probably the best run blocker of the three guys. So it's an interesting dichotomy between the three guys. None of them are hyper similar except for body type when you talk about Barch and Zakelj. And so I think that this is an interesting one. But I think if Connor Kobe gets the opportunity, it could be interesting. I still think that this might be a long-term play because so many free agents are coming up. But you never know. Dominic Pooney got an opportunity and never looked back.
And so, like, I think this is where 49ers fans are, is like the hope is he wins the job. Like, you're hoping he does enough to overcome and just be like, look, man, we got our two guards. Oh, it's probably the best value pick, him and CJ West of this draft. Like, man, that would be so sweet. So that's what a lot of fans want. It's just, will that translate? The amount of experience that he has in this system, the outside zone scheme and all that stuff with the Ferrets family, like, that's huge. I would love it. It just seems a little too rich to me at times. But again, you look at the contracts, like Ben Barch, it's not like they paid him like big time money to come in here. What was his deal? It's not even pulling up. They got him listed as a tackle. Come on, man. Anyway, yeah, here we go. $1.3 million, but it's almost fully guaranteed. But that's not starting left guard money. So it's Feliciano was a little bit more established. Burford was more established. But if it's Barch or if it's Connor Colby, I'm happy. I think both are a step up over Aaron Banks last year. I still cannot believe that dude got paid $18 million, but I hope he has a great career. Hope he finally stays healthy. Man, I would like that. Now, let's go real deep here. You got your tight end one, George Kittle. He's locked up, all-time Niner. I love it, love it, love it. You got your tight end two, Luke Farrell, but the 49ers run a lot of 3 tight end sets. Not a lot, but that is a active roster spot, special team spot all year. There is the contract status gives nothing because you have Jake Tonjes, Braden Willis, Mason Pline, Ross Dwelly. None of them, zero guaranteed dollars between the 4 of them, all of them on minimum deals. What's going to happen and again, for people that are like, dude, tight end 3, who cares? The 49ers run tight end 3 packages consistently all season long. Like, this is somebody who will play.
Yeah, I think if there's one position that there's potentially still a hole, and we talked about guard, I think that one still has to be worked out, but I think it's tight end 3, and they don't really have a move tight end. That's not what you got in the tight end that you signed in free agency. You got a blocking tight end, and we talked about this in the whole draft process. They need to go get a move tight end. They met with Harold Fannin. We were talking about him. We were talking about Terrence Ferguson and these guys that really fit what the 49ers were potentially looking for. They did not hit on any of those guys in those 11 draft picks. I don't think it worked out because once you got to a certain point in the draft, those guys didn't really exist per se. And so you bring back Ross Dwelley, and honestly, I feel the most comfortable with Ross Dwelley being tight end 3 right now because I just haven't seen it from Braden Willis. I thought him coming from OU, the tape that I had saw, I thought he could be a move tight end in the NFL. We just haven't seen him be able to make anything happen when it comes to catching the football. And so I think that right now they probably feel the most comfortable with Ross Dwelley, and Ross Dwelley is going to come in and compete right away. Jake Tunn just never got on the field last year. I think they were hoping he was going to be more than what he is, some versatility because he played some fullback when he was with the Chicago Bears. And so I thought that they were looking at that. I think Pline's still too far away, by the way. I just think that this guy's still just a developmental player that's not ready to go. So right now I'd put Ross Dwelley there, and we're having the same conversation we had 2 years ago. Is Ross Dwelley good enough to be tight end 3? Well, right now with the current roster, I think he is.
Duct tape Dwelley, baby. Michael says with all the stuff at the tight end, what is the chance of Hanshaw, who is invited to rookie camp, getting a shot? Practice squad's probably best case scenario for Hanshaw, but I want Pline to win it because his ceiling is higher, but I think it's going to be Dwelley as well. Now, a little bit of a hot take here. This is definitely not in the notes. There's rumors going around, and John Lynch even said if Mikael Williams did go, if he was picked by the Saints, they were going to go for the offensive player at pick 11. I would be willing to bet money it was Colston Loveland. I really think that they were high on him. And now there's a couple, league sources. What do you want to do with this? That said, like the 49ers were really high on Ted McMillan and really high on Colston Loveland. He was my tight end 1. He goes one spot before the 49ers. I think that pick was going to be Mikael Williams or Colston Loveland. And everybody wants to talk like, Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren was on the board. Colston Loveland went 10. Tyler Warren went 14. And everybody was just like, I'm telling you, I made so much money betting Colston Loveland going first tight end overall, by the way. But anyway, that's just, I have no solid backing of that. That is just a John Chapman, I think, moment. I think if Mikael Williams was gone, I think they would have went Colston Loveland. Am I insane? I know I'm insane, but for this reason, am I insane, Ant?
I think the new report from Jeremy Fowler kind of puts that out there, that the 49ers were very interested in. Most of the teams that the 49ers called in the top 10 believe they were coming up to get Ted McMillan or Colston Loveland and get an extreme playmaker. And that's the thing. If you're not completely sold on an offensive lineman, and the defensive end that you're really targeting in that position goes off the board at 9 to the Saints, and all of a sudden Colston Loveland sitting there, you can make an argument, go get the weapon that you need, because there were guys that are similar to Mikael Williams when you're talking about setting the edge, like a Landon Jackson, some of those guys later in the draft. You could have got, that would have been really good edge setters. Do they have the upside of Mikael Williams? No, but you pivot. And I think that's what the 49ers have learned to do a lot with these draft picks, is just pivot and find players with similar traits that they can target. So that would have been a lot of fun. Colston Loveland was my favorite tight end as well. I got put onto him very early last season, so I got to watch a lot of his games. My sister's boyfriend is a huge Michigan fan, so I watched a ton of Colston Loveland this season, and so I think that he was definitely tight end 1 for me as well. So that would have been interesting.
And then, here's the deal. Let's go down. How far down the rabbit hole do you want to go, Alice? You draft a tight end, and then you got the George Kittle trade for that second rounder. I'm just saying, it was before the extension. I'm thankful it didn't happen. I'm just saying, it scares me, and sometimes I think about it like, oh man, this whole team could have went different. You get Colston Loveland early, you trade Kittle, you double up in the second round on defensive end. Like, that's gross. I don't like it, but that's kind of where my head goes sometimes. I'm not healthy. Now, last kind of roster spot I want to talk about, and then we're going to talk about some of the free agents out there and all that stuff out there. Who is the third wide receiver work week 1? You know it's going to be Juwan Jennings. You know it's going to be Ricky Pearsall. You paid, $6 million guaranteed to Demarcus Robinson, but likely suspension off that DUI. I think everybody wants it to be Jacob Cowing. I loved watching the workout. Shout out to Ben for sharing that. The Ricky Pearsall working out with Jacob Cowing and all that stuff out in Florida. That was cool. Seems like Cowing's doing what he needs to do. Who's that wide receiver 3?
I think that's a big question mark, because the 49ers, haven't really proven that they're sold on Jacob Cowing right now. I like Jacob Cowing. I think he fits nice within the offense. I think it would be a fun thing to see him kind of elevate his game. but I think that there's still some question marks with him, and he's never going to be a great blocker. But can he be somebody that at least gets in the way? I think that's going to be one of the keys to see how he develops there. Also, he should this year know where to line up, not have the problems when it comes to just lining up at the line of scrimmage, being in the right positions. Those things will help him with opportunities on the field as well. I think he's the most dynamic. So I would like to see him. But I think that you've got Trent Taylor, and we know that they always feel comfortable with Trent Taylor, especially early on. You're going to have the exemption potentially with Demarcus Robinson, and then, of course, Ayuk probably starting on PUP. So you're going to have some roster spots available. So you've got a guy like Trent Taylor. I think you got a guy like Russell Gage, who Kyle Shanahan definitely likes. Isaiah Hodgins, I think, would be another potential target. I think those guys are in the mix. I think everyone's rooting for Jacob Cowan because we want to see that draft pick work out. He's got the dynamic speed. But I think a couple of veterans, and I think Russell Gage and Isaiah Hodgins could be in the mix to potentially step in and be a third wide receiver. And Hodgins, you got a big physical guy that can block. That's very a la Chris Conley type role. I think that one probably makes the most sense. I'm kind of talking myself into that. But I do like Jacob Cowan, and I hope that he finds a role on this team. But I think it's probably here and there different looks that Jacob Cowan can be used in.
That I think everybody wants it to be Cowan. Like, I mean, we all see that 50-yard reception and just stacking that corner and just like, oof, like you see it and you want that. It's just, can he put all the other stuff together? And I'm hoping, it seems like he's taking the right approach. Definitely hit the weight room. Like he's the smallest wide receiver we got, but dang, dude is jacked. He's added some weight. And so I like to see that. Now we're getting a lot of questions right here. Jadeveon Clowney just got cut from the Carolina Panthers. Crazy Juice says, do you think the Niners should try and sign Jadeveon Clowney? Michael, do the 49ers take a look at Clowney? Now, I put this out on Twitter, and I am the most, how do I say this? I can't stand Jadeveon Clowney. I don't like Jadeveon Clowney. Here's what I said. If you didn't learn your lesson from Devondre Campbell, then you would probably want the 49ers to sign Jadeveon Clowney. I don't think this guy cares about football. He is a mercenary, and he's been literally left at home by teams. The Browns, of all teams, literally said, we don't want this guy traveling with us because he's such an issue in the locker room. I do not want this guy anywhere around this locker room. I am 100% out on Jadeveon Clowney. Where do you stand? And man, I've gotten 10 emails. Jadeveon Clowney. I am so big against this.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this either, because I think you just went and got Mikael Williams, and he does what Jadeveon Clowney does, maybe with more upside, because he's probably going to generate a lot more pass rush. But you get Clowney to set the edge in the run game. You get him to play, that base defensive end. That's what he does really well. I think you already got that. Mikael Williams can handle that role. I don't think you need Jadeveon Clowney. I think the argument would be more for a designated pass rusher. We brought up earlier the pass rush. A veteran, if you're going to get somebody, it would make more sense to get a Von Miller or one of those guys that can bring speed off the outside in a designated pass rush role than Jadeveon Clowney. So I think football-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think when you look in the locker room, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't really need Trent Williams and Brock Purdy and Fred Warner to have to go up to this guy and say, hey, look, stop complaining that Nick Bosa is getting more looks than you. Nick Bosa is better than you. I don't want to hear it. And we already had the Devondre Campbell issue last year. Let's not go get somebody that's the defensive end version of Devondre Campbell. So no, I'm good with the way they are. And I think the designated pass rusher makes more sense for the 49ers.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know the term, but like people are coming at me on like Twitter. John, this is comical. You have no idea what you're talking about. Hard disagree. Just like, I mean, it's just going on and on and on. People saying I don't know ball, zero evidence that he's a non-locker room guy. And I'm like, I'm sending these guys articles like, no, it's not. Like, literally, this guy has chosen to not play football because Myles Garrett is getting more pass rush opportunities than he is. Like, that is not somebody I want to bring on. And look at Bid. Hard pass on Clowney. Bad enough, I got to see Mac Jones. That is just wonderful. Yeah, I don't know. And so, like, here's what happens. And, like, I refer to myself as a wet blanket usually whenever, like, this player's cut or this player's available or a trade option. And, half of my inbox is, oh, dude, we should trade for Aaron Rodgers, or we should trade for, maybe they'll get rid of Herbert, these like outlandish whatever. And like, I don't like to be the guy that's just like, no, it doesn't make any sense. But in most of these, like, this isn't the NBA. These things don't typically happen. And whenever you just cut Leonard Floyd, who is better at this point in his career than Jadeveon Clowney, even though they're about the same age, for cash-only considerations, why would you then go around and turn a high cash signing? This is a mercenary player that just cares about 1 year guaranteed deal. Like, how does Jed York see this as a positive? Like, wait a second. We're literally playing Leonard Floyd like $7 million to play for another team, and now you want me to go sign another player that's the same kind of profile and age and less of a locker room guy? I just cannot get behind it. Now, if they go sign him, hey, I don't mind being wrong. I started it off talking about how I was wrong about the Debo pick at 147 for Jordan James. I'm wrong a lot, but that's my take. I do not want. I keep this guy away from my team. I'm not a Clowney guy at all.
Yeah, I think that they got in-house options. I think that they're a fan of Mikael Williams, Etor Gross-Matos. I think you look at, even Sam Okuwanu, I think that he shows some things. I still want to see what Robert Beal Jr. can do. Robert Beal Jr. has developed into a very consistent run stopper. He sets a hard edge, and that was not what he was drafted for. They brought him to kind of bring some pressure off the edge, right? The GTFO stat. I'm interested to see, now that he's got this run defense figured out, does that start to allow him to kind of turn loose and maybe add some more pass rush to his game? So I'm still interested to see what Robert Beal Jr. could do. He is still a young player, so he was translating from playing a little bit of a different type of role at Georgia. So I'm curious what happens. Also, does he get any influence from Mikael Williams? That's one of the things I'm interested to with Robert Beal Jr. He's still somebody that I'm interested to see what he can do as well at the defensive end position.
Yeah, and I go back to this. Robert Taylor was my special teams player of the year last year. Robert Beal Jr., sorry. Like, that dude on the worst special teams in the entire NFL was constantly making positive plays against coaching. This is one guy that I do think sticks. He has no pass rush upside. Can that develop like you talked about? But so good against the run, so consistent against the run, and so consistently good. Not like average. Like, the dude was awesome on special teams, which was hard to do with Brian Schneider. But like, I think that he sticks. I really, really do. And so I know it's not like sexy, but man, you're sitting there talking all pre-draft, whatever else. We want defensive ends that set the edge in the run game. That dude does it as well as anybody on your roster. Bosa's the best, maybe the best in the business, but like, there's a rotational piece for Robert Beal Jr., I believe. Is he a lock to make the roster? No, but I think the special teams and the fact that he is so solid and consistent against the run game, he's a snap eater. You know what I mean? Like, Bosa needs a break. You send him out there on early downs. That's awesome. Now, the athletic profile, the run in the 4.4, man, year 3, can you finally learn how to rush the passer even a little bit? That's a question, but man, I'm pretty sure Robert Beal Jr. is making this roster. And I might be in the minority on that, and I'm okay with that, but I think he's going to be out there. I'm with you, Ant. Now, any other positions that perhaps we skipped over, or players that we did not mention that you want to go back to? Did I skip anybody that standed out to you?
No, I don't think so. I think we've pretty much gotten there. I think the only other conversation that's going to come up in this process is going to be, running back. I've heard a lot of people kind of, it's not about a starter, but they've been talking about who's going to be running back too. Is it going to be Isaac Arendo? Is it going to be Jordan James? I think that's something that's going to come down to competition at training camp. But I would like to say, I think that Isaac Arendo right now is going to be that guy. I think that they're going to feel confident with his ability to step in, knowing this role already. But don't be shocked when Jordan James comes out there and starts ripping off some really nice runs in the preseason, and everyone starts going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Because when it comes to his vision and the way that he attacks holes and gets downhill and brings physicality, that part of his game reminds me of Elijah Mitchell. I think that he's very aggressive. When he sees the hole, he just goes and hits it. And I'm sure that's what Bobby Turner really enjoyed about his film. So he's an interesting guy. How quickly can he pick up pass protection and also be more consistent with catching the football? His route running's good, and when he rips off catches, he's dynamic. The question is, can he not have drops? And I think If that happens, then it becomes a real conversation for running back too. But man, that guy's a lot of fun to watch. But I think Garindo's whole shot ability still gives him the advantage.
I would love for Jordan James to win that job. I think I value consistency over home run. That's just my own offensive, defensive, philosophical, whatever. Like guys like Jordan James, I would take that over Isaac Garindo. Guys like, I don't know, Evan Anderson, I would take over, that Jordan Elliott role. Like I want consistency. I don't like the boom or bust play style. So like, we'll see how that goes. Kid Isaac Garindo grow a little bit and become more consistent. That would be nice. But I would like Jordan James to win that job. I hope he takes it. But either way, iron sharpens iron, and you at least have bodies there now. I'm not sure the running back position got better, but with the health of Christian McCaffrey, man, I'm starting to look at season-long bets. That comeback player of the year, Christian McCaffrey bet is staring me in the eyes. Like if, and it's a big if, but if Christian McCaffrey can't stay healthy, who's to say he can't be comeback player of the year? Go back to, man, you remember, it's not that long ago that he broke the record for most consecutive touchdowns in games scored.
Yeah, I mean, the dude was the reason the red zone offense was so good in 2023 was Christian McCaffrey. And it was the run game. They were consistently running the football right down your throat. You go back to that playoff sequence when they're playing some of these tough games, they're finishing around the goal line. That was very much missed last year. And I think that Christian McCaffrey bringing that dynamic back to the offense is going to be huge. You're right. He could be comeback player of the year. And I think that he would deserve it. If he comes back and has any sort of a season that's close to even 2022 and what he did in that season, I think he wins comeback player of the year. I think it's interesting. One more question for you. Who you got, Jordan Elliott, because you brought him up, or CJ West starting next to Alfred Collins? Because I think we all think Alfred Collins is starting. But who do you think they go, Jordan Elliott or CJ West at the other tackle spot?
I could see them starting Jordan Elliott. I don't like that. But Shanahan loves him. You remember whenever he called him his best run defender? Like I laughed. I was like, I went back and recorded. I was like, no way he just said that. But anyway, so I could see it being Jordan Elliott. And the idea is, well, CJ West is your Bravo group guy that could blossom into, that one technique that could blossom into that. But probably going to be Jordan Elliott, and it's going to drive me absolutely insane. And this is why this question this is my right here from Icon says, honest question, John, no shade. Shade is welcome. You're allowed to throw shade. If we had all these great against the run players like Bill, why do we suck against the run last year? Well, Bill's just like, whenever I say I like Robert Beal Jr., I like him as like your number 5 defensive end. And you get 10 to 15 snaps a game in that role, and I think that's what he should be. So, if you got 65 plays a game, he's out there for 15. He's a snap eater guy. The problem last year against the run was when Bosa went out, you had no quality defensive linemen, defensive tackles besides Evan Anderson stopping the run. Malik Collins was all right, but Jordan Elliott is a big reason why that was so bad. Yeah, your linebacker play was so bad. The safety play was so bad outside of Malik Mustafa. There were so many bad run players. Now look at what they did this year. Well, Devondre Campbell's gone. You go get 2 run stuffing defensive ends. You get 2 run stuffing defensive tackles, run stuffing defensive end, run stuffing linebacker, run stuffing nickel, like run stuffing safety. You replaced a lot of that. Now the depth is still going to be a concern. I don't think that the 49ers are going to be a top 5 rushing defense. It's possible that they could, but you have to have those rotational pieces like a Robert Beal that gets 10 to 15 snaps that can help out. And when Bosa got injured, that's when everything that Cardinals game, whenever it was like a pride game, and Jordan Elliott quit on his team on the field 3 or 4 plays in a row. But he's still with us. But hopefully he takes. I did everything I could. I made 2 cut-ups of Jordan Elliott quitting on the team, and I never put them out there because I didn't want to do negative stuff. And so I've done that in the past where I've released it, and I always regret it. But I was like, oh, they'll cut him. They'll cut him. I still have him on my computer. Maybe whenever he starts week 1 and does terrible, I won't. Anyway, this is the conversation I have with the evil angel on my shoulder. I don't know. Any takes that you have, Ant, before we wrap the show up, just on the run game being so bad last year with guys like Robert Beal and what that looks like this year?
Yeah, I think it mainly come down to the interior defensive line. That's why they made wholesale changes there. You brought up Malik Collins. I thought he played admirably, but when they were getting duo blocked and they were getting duo blocked a lot, that's not his game. That's not what he's good at. They made an effort this season to move on from players like that. And that's why they moved on from Malik Collins. Even though they like him, they wanted to get Alfred Collins, CJ West, those type of players that can play the run first and then rush the passer. And I thought it's a very smart move to go with. We're going to develop pass rush. We're going to have really good run stoppers. And I think that's going to make things easier for the linebackers. The run stopping is going to get better because one thing people don't remember or don't think about is tackling's a lot more difficult with more space. And when you can get defensive linemen that can make it so holes are a little bit smaller, linebackers and safeties don't miss as many tackles around the box because there's less space. And so there's a smaller target to go hit. And so that's going to be one of the keys for linebacker tackling getting better and also safety tackling getting better. Let's make smaller holes so Jair Brown can come up and stud someone up in the hole. That'll be a lot better for him. So that's one of the keys to getting an Alfred Collins, a CJ West, and Evan Anderson out there on the field. Let's keep everything tight and inside so those guys can go make plays. Space is the enemy of tackling.
Oh, I like it. I like it. It's funny because, whenever you're running tackling circuit and you're doing these drills and stuff, and you always start small and then you get to open field, and that's where guys just look silly. But that's the NFL. And you're hoping guys like Alfred Collins, CJ West, Mikael Williams will shrink down those gaps. And even if they don't, man, dude, Nick Martin in the open field, whew, that dude can tackle, man. I'm excited. This has been a fun show, and I feel a little bit more convicted now about some of these roster battles, and I'm excited about that. And, man, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. And what are some shows you got coming up in this following week? I'm on vacation, so everybody's got to go to 49ers Cutback if you haven't already. Talk to us about some upcoming shows and what's going on in your world.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to be looking at the NFC West and what they did in the draft because I think it's interesting to look at how each one of them attacked, and it kind of corresponds with what other teams are doing within the NFC West. So I'm just going to go deep into that and talk about the NFC West. It's going to be a fun conversation that I think everyone should come check out because actually every NFC West team did a pretty good job in the draft, and you can kind of figure out why. And so that's going to be the fun conversation I'm going into. I'm going to start getting into some of the depth charts as well as we work towards the schedule release, and then I'll put my attention to that. But I am curious, too, because here in just a little over an hour, I think, or maybe around an hour, Robert Saleh is going to talk to the media for the first time since being hired. And I think that's going to be interesting as well to see kind of what his idea of this 49ers defense is going to be.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I like it, man. All right, that's going to do it for us in this show. I'll be live Wednesday next for the schedule release. We'll have, again, I've already built out the platform, got some big exciting news coming. The plan is we're going to every single road game. That's the plan right now. The schedule is going to alleviate those. Miss Chapman gets a veto or two. But right now, when there's those Thursday East Coast games or holiday games, those just make it difficult. But currently, for 49ers rushroadtrip.com, we are planning to go to all of the road games. So, and man, like I said, just built out that Saints menu for our tailgate there. That's going to be fire. I ain't missing that one. The Bucks, New York Giants. You got Houston Texans. That's going to be our biggest event of the year. I can already tell you that. And then Indianapolis and the Cleveland Browns. So if you live in or around those, when we release tickets on Wednesday, that's the cheapest they'll be at all time. We always release cheapest, and then they go up. We would like to reward the people that have been with us for a while. So stay tuned for that. That'll be Wednesday the 14th. And Ant, you are my hero, and I'm so thankful for these shows. Next week, we're taking off because I'm gone. But everybody watch 49ers Cutback. And until next time, that's going to do it for us. Stay strong, faithful.